Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit...
Well, thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Tribulsi. Catholic and other faith leaders came together in San Diego today to support immigrants. They offered prayers in courtrooms where deportation hearings were taking place, and it seems we were having some technical issues. Well, KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer says it followed a special mass for refugees and migrants downtown.
It was a special mass Friday morning at San Diego's Cathedral of St. Joseph.
Look with compassion on refugees and exiles, on segregated persons and on lost children.
Dozens of parishioners filled the pews to hear San Diego Bishop Michael Fong. The mass honored World Refugee Day.
Today, I'm still grateful to the United States, a nation of immigrants, for providing me with a chance to start anew.
Pham himself is a refugee who came to the United States unaccompanied as a boy from Vietnam with two of his siblings. He says it's concerning to see the current deportation practices in the United States. It reminds him of what he saw before leaving Vietnam.
It involved seeing people being taken away without an obvious reason. It is sad and disheartening for me to see this kind of things playing out in this country today.
While Bishop Pham's mass was deeply personal, the diocese says what happened after church was uncommon.
We'll be in the hallways, we'll be in the courtrooms. There's not much you can do in the courtrooms except sit and listen.
A group of leaders from Catholic and other faith traditions drove to the federal building. There, they provided prayers and support to immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers for their court appearances. Our Lady of Guadalupe church pastor, Father Scott Santa Rosa, advocated for the church to get involved.
As we recognize we're in somewhat extreme times. Immigrants, migrants feel like they are under attack, they're threatened, and so I think the church in a real concrete way wanted to show we stand with you.
Santa Rosa says he did not see any arrests. He heard 2 cases that were given a continuance and believes their presence made a difference.
We saw ICE officers in the hallways with masks, and that was, of course, an intimidating presence, despite the fact that the federal court staff has been very accommodating today.
Imam Taha Hassan was one of a few other local religious leaders who joined the Catholic clergy in a show of unity.
As faith leaders, we preach from the pulpit. We preach and talk about justice and love and compassion and all that stuff. Now it's time for us to show these principles and these values on the street.
The faith leaders stayed inside for roughly 2 hours. Bishop Pham says the diocese will continue to support immigrants at the federal building as needed. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
And now to an update on 2 fires burning in the East County, starting with the Haywick fire in El Cajon, where all evacuation orders have been lifted. The fire started around 2:30 yesterday afternoon in the Glenview area south of Lake Jennings. It has burned 51 acres and is 75% contained. Thankfully, there are no reports of structural damage. And now to the northeast, the crews are still working to contain the Monte fire in Lakeside. It is 35% contained and has now burned over 1,000 acres. That one started on Tuesday afternoon in steep rocky areas near El Monte Road. Some evacuation orders and warnings remain in place. Nearby, El Capitan Reservoir is closed through the weekend. CAL FIRE is using it as an aircraft staging area and water source to fight the flames.
Tonight, our typical June gloom returns as you look towards the coast. We're at 61 for the low in the city, and of course, becoming cloudy as we head through the overnight hours with that June gloom coming in. But we're also going to start to find that as we head into tomorrow, the cool air has fully settled in, and for some spots, it's going to feel a little chilly. All the full forecast coming up.
Governor Gavin Newsom and state lawmakers are negotiating over how to close a $12 billion budget deficit. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says funding for homelessness is on the chopping block.
This fiscal year, the state gave $1 billion to the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program, which gives cities and counties money for affordable housing, shelters, and other services. Both the legislature and governor zeroed out the program in their respective budgets for the fiscal year that begins July 1st. Zach Schlegel is policy director for PATH, a statewide homeless service provider. He says homelessness in California has flattened while it's grown immensely in other states.
And it's only thanks to the state's investment that we've been able to kind of get to this level. Again, we're kind of fighting for that equilibrium at this moment in time, but the long-term push is to get that ongoing funding to ensure the continuity and make sure we're really starting to make inroads into really truly trying to solve homelessness.
While Newsom wants to cut virtually all state spending on homelessness, the legislature proposes defunding it in the coming fiscal year while restoring some of those funds in the following year. Schlegel says such inconsistent funding makes it extremely hard for nonprofits to plan for the future and build on past successes.
There's a lot of people that are in these positions that are helping these people to exit homelessness. And if they find out oh, next week I'm going to get laid off. Oh, and the program is going to get refunded in 2 months. We'll rehire you then. I mean, that's not sustainable for anybody.
The governor and legislature have to reconcile their respective budgets by the end of the month. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
A new COVID variant, nicknamed Razor Blade, is spreading in parts of California. KPBS health reporter Heidi DeMarco says while most Americans don't see COVID as a major public health threat, experts say people should not let their guard down.
Some people who have caught the new strain describe a very bad sore throat.
So basically, the back of their throat is all irritated, and when they're trying to swallow something, it feels like that's been described as shards of glass.
It's part of a COVID family called Nimbus. The CDC expects it to become the dominant strain soon. Here in San Diego County, case numbers are still low, just 317 reported the week of June 7th. But hospitalizations have inched up.
The big caveat is that people who are at high risk for COVID still are getting hospitalized. People who are taking various kinds of chemotherapy, people who are immunosuppressed, or the very elderly.
Dr. Davey Smith is an infectious disease specialist at UC San Diego Health. He says it's human nature to want to downplay the risk of COVID. Pew Research recently found 80% of people report rarely or never wearing a mask. And more than half say COVID just isn't something they worry about much these days.
I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of talking about it, but it's still a thing, so it doesn't mean that we can just totally ignore it anymore.
Smith says COVID is now part of the seasonal virus landscape, along with RSV, the flu, and other respiratory bugs.
That when we start developing symptoms that look like a fevers, chills, cough, and now a big bad sore throat, we're going to have to say, aha, I need to get tested for COVID.
The new variant comes as new federal guidelines say most healthy adults under 65 aren't routinely recommended to get COVID boosters.
The question that I have around the guidelines is who's going to get really sick and have to be in the hospital and who will ultimately die of the infection. Will these guidelines change any of that or make it worse or make it better?
He says time will tell. Heidi DeMarco, KPBS News.
A new ban on transgender people in the military has destabilized the lives of thousands of people in uniform and their families. KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer has been following the story and joins us now. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
So you spoke to one sailor who was on the fast track to promotion, but then now faces an uncertain future. Can you give us an idea where this all started?
Sure. So in an executive order, his first day back in office, President Donald Trump declared that there's no such thing as being transgender and ordered the entire federal government to only recognize two sexes, male and female. Days later, he ordered the Pentagon to ban transgender people from the military, resurrecting a policy from his first term that had been undone by Joe Biden. Senior Chief Ben Kibler is a Navy operations specialist based here in San Diego. He sat down with us to talk about his career and how it's been upended by the ban. You told me you've been in the Navy for 13 years and that you're a senior chief. Is that an unusual kind of career trajectory in your rating?
Yes. So I made chief, which is E7, in 6.5 years, almost at the 7 mark. That is, it's not unheard of, but it's definitely not common or the norm. I was fast-tracked. A lot of that is because my leadership saw things in myself and gave me opportunities because they believed that they believed in me and they believed that I could accomplish what they were asking of me.
Kibler's Navy record backs that up. Early in his career, one evaluation said he was ranked number 1 out of 60 other sailors in his rank. Other eval quotes were unequivocally my best deck plate leader, my go-to senior chief, and exceptional deck plate leadership and unwavering loyalty toward mission success. He was even on track for promotion. This year, he was selected to commission as a limited duty officer, or LDO. Then, word of the Pentagon's new trans ban came down. Kibler spent the first decade of his Navy career living as a woman, the gender he was assigned at birth. In 2020, he came out as trans.
It got to a point that I felt like I wasn't living authentically with who I am, and and because of that, I wasn't living in line with my values, and I didn't feel like I was living in alignment with the Navy's values either. The Navy's core values are honor, courage, and commitment, right? I had been going to therapy specifically to deal with that for about 2.5, almost 3 years before I made any kind of medical decision with my doctors for what my transition entailed. And that differs for everybody, what their transition actually looks like.
Oh, was this some radical therapist medical setting, or was this Navy medical?
This is Navy medical, yeah. I did everything through the Navy.
Trans service members are being forced out at the same time as the Pentagon is moving to rename several support ships now named for civil rights leaders, including Harvey Milk, the first openly gay man elected to office in California. San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria said this month it's all part of a broader attack on the LGBTQ+ community.
We understand what it is to now be in the crosshairs of an administration that does not see us as fellow Americans, not see us equal Americans.
After Kibler transitioned, he was assigned to the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli. He says despite what the administration says about the ability of trans people in uniform, he had no issues when he reported on board.
Everybody could see that I was just a member of the team, and that I'm pulling my weight, and that I'm trying my best the same way everybody else is, and that's what's respected. Nobody really cares. Nobody really cares. We have bigger things to worry about than, what gender somebody identifies as. Yeah, it's just really hard. It's devastating. I feel like as I said, I was selected for a commission on Monday, and then this came out on Wednesday. To achieve that and not really be able to relish it, and knowing that you're never going to put it on. And not because of, it's not, I didn't do anything wrong. It's not because of a lack of performance. I actually overperform.
A pair of lawsuits are working their way through federal courts, but the ban is moving ahead. Although everyone is supposed to be getting honorable discharges, officers are reportedly also receiving discharge codes that tell potential employers their national security risks.
I believe in my country. I love my country. I want to serve my country. And I think that that's really what needs to be taken away is from all of this is these are just people just like any other people who are just trying to do their jobs and trying to make the best out of everything.
Like thousands of trans service members, Senior Chief Kibler is waiting on a separation date. Until he has one, he says it's basically impossible to look for a new job.
Oh, some great reporting there. KPBS military reporter Andrew Dyer, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, European leaders express hope for more talks after meeting with Iran's foreign minister. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The pause on President Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs is set to end in less than 3 weeks. Many countries are facing tough economic decisions. Amy Kiley reports Canadian leaders say they've decided to counter some U.S. trade policies.
There is absolutely a clock that is ticking down.
With trade deadlines looming and no G7 summit deal, Canada is retaliating against the U.S. On July 21st, it's set to impose new tariff rate quotas on steel. They're for countries that don't have related free trade agreements with Canada. That could make American-made steel less appealing to Canadian buyers.
We're going to adjust them to levels consistent with the progress that's made at that point on the broader trading arrangements with the United States.
U.S. duties on Canadian steel and aluminum are 50% right now. Two officials say Canada has proposed swapping defense spending for relief from those measures to no avail. The U.S. and Canada are committed to reaching some kind of trade agreement in 30 days after talks during this week's G7 summit. But analysts say a number of world leaders are disappointed that gathering didn't produce any new U.S. deals.
For many of those leaders, they saw this, and their delegation saw this, as their last opportunity to have some time to sit down face-to-face, one-on-one with President Trump before the July 9th tariff deadline.
That's when a pause on the president's so-called reciprocal duties is set to end for a list of countries.
You just want to be humble and have some deference to the inflationary impacts that could result from tariffs.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
For now, U.S. businesses are paying a 10% universal tariff on imports from most countries. It's up to 25% for certain Canadian and Mexican goods. A new report highlights the economic impact that mass deportations could have on California, and it's in the billions of dollars. J.R. Stone reports from San Francisco.
Building housing in San Francisco on this day, but a new report by the Bay Area Council highlights the economic impact of large-scale deportations of undocumented workers in California and how it could not only impact agriculture, but the construction of apartments and condos.
They make up 33% of the state's farm workers and 26% of its construction laborers. These are sectors that already are experiencing labor shortages absent of any immigration policy issue.
Abby Royce is research director at the Bay Area Council. She says that mass deportations across the state could impact California's GDP by up to $275 billion. She says the numbers show that undocumented workers in California generate more than $23 billion in tax revenue.
The construction industry right now is faced with a huge labor shortage. We estimate about 500,000 that we're currently short in the market. And now with mass immigration policies, we project that if this doesn't slow down, we're going to be 1.3 million workers short by 2030.
And construction concerns trickle down to housing concerns, according to those we spoke with.
And without a good construction workforce, if we deport a huge portion of that workforce, that would worsen the existing shortages in that industry. It would delay housing projects. And then, of course, ultimately continue to drive up costs, which are already astronomically high in the state of California.
We're not going to address our challenges in housing affordability and stabilized prices if we don't have enough supply of homes. And if we're making it very difficult to do that.
I talked with a construction worker involved in this San Francisco project who told me mass deportations could cripple his company and others they contract with. A reason that George Carrillo of the Hispanic Construction Council is now working with lawmakers in Washington, D.C. on the issue.
We agree with some of the immigration policies that he's put forward. Like, we want safe communities. We don't want criminals, in our community. We support that. But we also need a policy in place that's going to protect the workforce, because we need to understand and identify and address that our immigrant population is what makes America great.
And that was J.R. Stone with that report. Something to take note of if you're on the roads this weekend. A major freeway connection in Kearny Mesa will be off limits. The westbound connector from State Route 52 to the 805 freeway will be closed starting at 9 p.m. tonight. The closure will last through 5 a.m. Monday morning, and the closure is due to road work in the area. Well, summer officially begins at 7:42 tonight, and that is the exact moment of the summer solstice and the start of astronomical summer, although meteorologists mark the beginning of summer on June 1st. The first of 2 rounds of extreme heat is underway for parts of the eastern U.S. As the summer continues, many homeowners will look for ways to keep their homes cool. Ivan Rodriguez has expert tips to beat the heat without breaking the bank.
With summer heat bearing down, Josh Locker with Oxair USA says energy bills are a growing concern for many American families.
Homeowners say they're more cautious about summer spending and worried about how they're going to afford to cool their homes.
Locker says small steps like filter changes and outdoor unit cleanings make a big difference.
Change your filter out, wash your condenser. After you mow the grass, make sure you clean that condenser off, wash all those grass clippings that may get on the condenser outside.
And timing matters. Putting off maintenance can turn into costly repairs.
If one thing breaks, it could take out another and another.
Temperatures are expected to rise across parts of the Northeast and central U.S. in a prelude to next week's heat dome. The heat dome is forecast to expand across the central and eastern U.S. by the weekend, covering parts of the southern plains to the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast. High temperatures across these regions are expected to soar at least 15 degrees above normal and will mark the hottest temperatures of the year to date, rising into the 90s. Humidity will make it feel even hotter.
The big thing that I would say is if you take a shower, make sure and turn your exhaust fan on, because every time you're running water in the house, you're actually adding humidity as well. But keeping the doors closed, in and out as fast as you can.
In Atlanta, I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
With Astronomical Summer starting tonight, you'd think that, yeah, it would start to feel a little more summer-like. Not the case. We're actually pretty cool by June standards as we head into tomorrow, and the onshore flow will keep that marine layer fairly strong. There is a slow warming process that begins as we close out the weekend, but for some, we're really not going to notice much of that even into the early part of next week. As you can see, tonight, 61 the low in the city. As you head towards Oceanside, same thing. Similar setup for Chula Vista. And working your way towards Mount Laguna, we're back to 58 for the low. Working our way into tomorrow, this is the core of the cool. We're moving through California into Nevada, even parts of Arizona. So for our region, some of these numbers are not going to seem like June at all. As you look, you can see 68 for the high in the city, but once you get outside, we're into the mid-70s in Ramona and only topping out in the mid-90s in Borrego Springs. Remember, this is when the sun's rays are most intense this time of year for us in the northern hemisphere, and it's going to feel a little bit different here the days to come. Mid-70s, we hold on to that for the coast. Really no big changes, maybe even falling off a little bit as we go into Tuesday, Wednesday, but for the most part, everyone else, our trend is to go actually up with the numbers. So it's a slow climb here, but for the inland communities, we do go back into the upper 70s by Sunday, and then we kind of hold on to that trend throughout much of the upcoming week. Mountain communities, note what happens here. 60s, we actually hold a lot of that through the early week, and then Wednesday is when we would make the big jump back into the 70s there with a little bit more warmth, and that's a similar setup for our desert communities as the triple digits are not on the board until Wednesday, though we'll be in the upper 90s as we step into Tuesday. Currently, though, your Saturday starting off pleasant here in the mid-90s. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
And if you're looking for a good listen this weekend, you can check out one of KPBS's newest podcasts. It is called The Finest. The podcast captures the people, art, and movements redefining our region's cultural identity. The latest episode is about local musicians who entered NPR's Tiny Desk contest. You can listen now wherever you get your podcasts. Small signs are popping up at national parks across the country, and they are asking the public to report any negative references to American history. It's part of a directive from President Trump. As Leslie Brinkley reports, critics say it's erasing narratives from the past.
Another sign of the times is now posted at national parks and memorials, like here at the Rosie the Riveter World War II Homefront National Historic Park in Richmond, and like here at the John Muir National Historic Site in Martinez. The new signage has barcodes urging visitors to report any signs or information, quote, that are negative about either past or living Americans or that fail to emphasize the beauty, grandeur, and abundance of landscape.
This is an attempt to rewrite history, whitewash history, eliminate the stories of critical contributors to history.
The reporting of history and the detailing of history is not a customer service issue. We are talking about fact. It is either fact or it is not fact. The fact that anyone visiting now who may disagree with the presentation of fact can complain about it, and perhaps their complaints will be actionable, is problematic. It sends a chilling message, I think, to us about who controls history in this country.
The new government intervention is coming at a time when the federal budget and staffing cuts are reverberating through the National Park Service. The signs are up at Yosemite, at Alcatraz, and at Manzanar National Historic Site.
When we talk about Port Chicago and Manzanar in particular, people died in these spaces.
Hands off the Park Service. The Park Service for over 100 years has been the storytellers of our nation's history. They've done that professionally and with care, and there's no reason to circumvent their authority.
Just as the new signs encourage feedback that could be critical of the narrative, there is also an opportunity for compliments.
I can assure you that I will be a part of resisting this. I will go to these monuments. I will lodge positive praise.
That was Leslie Brinkley with that report. San Diego's Frozen Zoo is the largest collection of living cells from endangered and extinct species in the world. 2025 marks 50 years of its groundbreaking conservation work, and it all began with scientist Kurt Brynishka, father of former kicker for the San Diego Chargers, Rolf Brynishka. The Frozen Zoo has cells of more than 1,300 species. Researchers use them to study an animal's genetic makeup, but they also believe the research can help reverse climate change and contribute to human cancer research.
We have, as a species, an enormous opportunity to change our impact on the world, because humankind has been causing the loss of species. Humankind can now stop that process.
The Wildlife Alliance plans to expand these laboratories to more countries worldwide over the next few decades. And please be sure to join us tonight for KPBS News This Week, where we revisit the most impactful and the most intriguing original reporting of the week. And that airs every Friday at 8:30 right here on KPBS. And as always, you can find tonight's stories right there on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great weekend.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.